Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Wir haben erstmal die Eröffnung in deutscher Sprache. Wir sind heute sehr, sehr glücklich, dass wir international wieder unterwegs sind und auch in mehr Generationen. Wie Sie unschwer sehen können, hat unser Gast Bob Stutz seine Enkelin mit an Bord. Also eine der jüngsten Anwärterinnen im Mehrgenerationen-Ansatz für CRM, wie ich es liebe, wie ich es empathisch rüberbringe und dass Bob eben auch ein 250% engagierter für die kommenden Generationen ist. This will be really tricky to make a quick translation of all the positive stuff I just said about Bob and his sein Enkelkind. What is the proper translation, Thomas?
Try kid.
I do understand and speak German, so it's fine.
So I was reflecting before we just went live that we are very honored to have our two special guests, Bob Stutz and Esteban Kolsky, both from SAP. And we would like to utilize the precious hour of time by starting with you two and your introduction, what you did before in the business and from which areas you came before you stay now in SAP. And I just have to kill that one. And looking forward, and then Thomas will jump in with the first questions after your introduction. So, Bob, would you be so kind and start?
Sure. So I started in this business basically after 22 years in the military. I went to a company called Sybase where I was running an engineering group, and then after Sybase, I went to a startup called Intrepid Systems, and we sold the company to PeopleSoft, which became PeopleSoft Retail, and then ended up working for Tom Siebel, first building out all the industries at Siebel, and then running all the application engineering. And from Siebel, I left right before the acquisition by Oracle. Went to SAP, spent 6 years at SAP, left there, went to Microsoft, then to Salesforce, and then found my way back here.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah. And I recall very much and very vividly when you came in with your team at the Win in Las Vegas and introduced a lot of stuff which is now reality in SAP, but at these days still blueprints and very visionary, and some stuff you tried then, the next approach to make it come to life, not under the SAP label.
True.
Esteban.
Yes, sir. I have nowhere near the level of that my illustrious boss has, but I done a lot of customer service world. I have over 30 years there. I started running. I was actually an operator in a call center, managed call centers. Worked for different consulting firms. Ended up doing one of the first implementations of Siebel sales and Cana service and D&B marketing back in 1997 when it first getting started. It collapsed in 2000, so I had to get a job, and I went to Gartner, where I spent 8 years working on the service agenda there. And then I left Gartner trying to work with a vendor for a year. And then I was independent at the time until Bob, who I've been following, and I like to say working with. He would say I know him, but they both mean the same. Since his time at SAP, first time somehow worked together, and asked me if I wanted to try to help set up the strategy, and now I'm doing a little bit more deeper dive into the C4C service and sales strategy and product.
Yeah.
There was quite some support for you. By the way, which is the dark side of the force?
There is no dark side, man. There's only light back here.
It's all shades of gray or what?
It's all gray.
Just what I'd expect to hear from a Sith.
If Esteban, I'm your father.
You have seen it also. Both angles. It's quite funny feeling, I can imagine. By the way, which is the dark side?
Let me try to check my keep talking.
All shades of gray.
Yeah, Esteban, your sound is horrible.
Yeah, your sound is. It
Just
is.
what I'd expect to hear from a Sith.
Esteban, I'm your father.
There you go. There. Is that better?
Somebody else should switch off Facebook. There's an
In an
echo.
open browser or something.
Esteban, you're loud and clear.
That wasn't me, I promise.
It's a new Esteban here right now.
Yeah. Anyways, so hopefully you got that. There is no light side. There's no dark side, lower and light side, and we're just here to make things pick up where both left off and make it much better going forward.
Mm. Well, what I'm interested, actually, you said it a couple of times, Bob, that you did 22 years of military. And how far did that help you in your career in the software services?
I think the thing that I always look at that when I think back about those 22 years, which seemed like an eternity ago. I think the one thing that it's helped me in this business, especially in the software business, is about staying focused and executing. Right. That is, it's one of the things that you would think would be very natural in the software business, but it's not. And the fact of the matter is that focus and execution are really the two keys to success at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Which is coming to culture. What cultures did you see? I mean, I know what culture you met at SAP then back in 2005, but what cultures did you see in the various companies?
Yeah, well, I think, back in those days in SAP, Thomas, all too well, the culture was not exactly the best culture. It was, CRM was not exactly it was more the bastard stepchild of the company back in those days. CX wasn't taken seriously, right? Yeah. And as you know, it took a lot of work just to get CRM 7, done, out the door, put that beautiful Web 2.0 interface on it, right? And so the culture was very different. It was a hard culture, actually, to be quite honest. And Microsoft was very different. Microsoft was a culture of engineers, of technology, of innovation, of being able to do things, and not have to ask permission and not have to have a lot of politics around getting stuff done, right? It was, Satya, was an amazing guy, supportive. Everything we did in CRM back in those days, and as you know, we totally transformed Microsoft CRM from what it was to what it is today, right? With the XRM platform and and everything else, and then Salesforce. Salesforce was like going to Love Fest. It was a culture of and to be honest, it took a little bit getting used to the Salesforce culture, because it's a culture of, really, truly people, it's one of, people having genuine care for each other. It's very employee centric. It's, Mark has built a culture of people who care for one another, and it's a culture of, yes, it's important to work hard, get stuff done, but it's also important to take care of yourself. It's important to take care of your fellow workers, and find some balance at the end of the day, right? It's where I learned to meditate. I learned to do things I would never do in a million years before, right? I mean, it really is a culture that was very, very different. It's also a culture of matrix, right? Because everything is matrixed in Salesforce. It's a little bit different operating there than it is in other companies, right? And so, but each company has its good and bad at the end of the day, right? And now coming back to SAP again, I mean, the culture has changed. It's I think what Christian and others are trying to do is really change the company, make the company better, get the culture to be much better than what it was. And look, it's working. It's it's going to take time, but I think the company is moving in the right direction at the end of the day. And to be honest, CX for the first time is something that is, I think, valued and recognized, that CX is a critical part of the company going forward. And and it wasn't like that 13 years ago. I can tell you that was definitely not the case.
Well, I know.
I mean, if I can complement that, I mean, the reason I'm here is because from the outside, you see Bob going from company to company, improving the state of CRM and starting the concept of platforms in Microsoft, and going to Salesforce and extending platform to be multi-cloud, and just growing all these different pieces. And on the other side, you see SAP going pretty much on its own direction, not exactly aligned with all the other players, but in its own direction, but with a need to get that structure to get to the next level, right? And I said this many times to SAP through the years until they stopped listening to me, that the opportunity is fantastic for SAP. The DNA of SAP makes it the only company that can actually deliver what we're going to deliver. And what was necessary was for Bob to bring the learnings and the pieces from all the other companies into SAP and provide that structure going forward movement that we didn't have before, right? If it would have been anybody else or anyone else doing the same thing, I definitely know that I would not be here. I mean, to me, the value is the opportunity plus the right person to provide the structure to take advantage of that opportunity.
Cool. Yeah, it's an amazing position that you are in right now. So I envy you a lot, really.
And, aside of showing that reflection coming from the outside, having the right team at the starting point, you started at a time to fix and rebundle and integrate a lot of stuff which from the outside as an analyst looked a bit like somebody was very keen on shopping what he could get, and he might have had a plan, but before he could make the plan come to life, he decided to go. So you had some inheriting things to make something new out of it, which for me is they are like Hercules doing another extra hard job. So would you like to share a bit what you had for an experience for the last months, at least?
The last month?
It's been a year since I've been back, and it's been a long year.
The months were with an S, Esteban. So I was you went to put it. Sorry for interrupting. You went to blood, sweat, and tears, and you did something fabulous. What you showed to the public, and I was really, really impressed.
I'll quote Bob when we had this conversation a couple months ago. We did a great job with the strategy. but now it's time to execute, and we need to start focusing on the lower level pieces and start working those lower level pieces, right? I mean, the strategy, it's I've been here for 10 months. It feels like, what, 6 years already.
Wow.
You know, it's actually it's a slower pace than Gartner, I'll tell you that much. That's a good part, but you know, but it's been intense. I mean, getting the strategy together and getting the company to take CX seriously and to understand the opportunity and to give us the resources we need has been intense, right? And Bob put a great team together, and now we need to start focusing on the execution. We have, you know, many pieces that are going forward. Some of them are great in track. Some of them need a little bit of help. So that's what I'm trying to do, is just focus a little bit more on the lower level. You know, Adrian has taken over the strategy. He's doing a fantastic job in executing the strategy. And you know, we need some help with the C4C. We need some help with marketing and commerce and CDP, and we're just going to go, you know, little by little forward. I mean, that's my perspective. I'm sure that Bob can tell it otherwise, but I think that we're doing a fantastic job with the team that we put together, and I think we have still the opportunity and the window is there. We just need to execute, and that's why I stepped to a lower level.
I think you know, it's, you know, anytime you come into a company to sort of figure out a new direction, revamp the products, it takes, you know, it takes a lot, right? Because it's, you know, the first thing you have to do is come in and really look at what you have to work with at the end of the day. And I knew what I was getting into when I went to SAP. I you know, one thing I do is I always keep a good handle on competitors and what they're doing, and you know, it didn't make sense from the outside what SAP had done. The acquisitions that had been done didn't make sense. You didn't see them moving forward, right? You didn't see a strategy that made sense in the market, right? And now, you know, it's taken time, but you know, slowly but surely, you know, we've started to blend this together. We fixed a lot of things. You know, you have to, first and foremost, you have customers that you have to make happy again. You have to get them believing again that, you know, that you can fix this, that you can make it solid, and that you're gonna move it in the right direction that's going to help them solve their business problems at the end of the day. And you know, that's taken a year to get to where we are today, but it's been a lot of hard work. And you know, now we have a good strategy. We have, you know, with the acquisition of Amarsis, it was a missing piece for us. You know, we've also, which we don't talk about a whole lot, but you know, we've put in the market a new commerce platform that is totally cloud-based. 100%, and you know, it really is designed for direct-to-consumer B2C. Mm-hmm. And you know, we in this year we've managed to get a lot done. That you know, the CDP from conception to beta, and you know, basically about 5.5 months. You know, GA will happen next month. You know, so you know, it's just a matter of focus, right? You need to figure out what it is that's broken. Yeah. How are you going to fix it? Because you have to fix and keep customers happy and keep selling and keep being able to move things forward. But at the same time, you have to figure out a strategy that's going to get you ahead, right? Because you can't just depend on what you've done to get you ahead. You have to figure out how you're going to build new things, how you're going to take a different approach, different direction, right? You know, every company I've gone to, and you know, my basic philosophy about this has been, when I left Siebel, I really made a commitment to myself that, you know, I love the CRM space. Mm-hmm. And my fear was that the CRM space would die if in companies like Salesforce would just literally run away with CRM. And I don't think that's a good thing for customers or the industry at the end of the day. I think competition is important, and I think having more than one player who has strengths that are different from what a Salesforce has are important. So if you look at Microsoft, they have some very unique strengths that we built into that product set, and at SAP, we're doing the same thing, taking a very different approach, going at things in a very different way. And at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is bring the back end and front end together in a seamless way for the first time, which is something that we tried 13 years ago to do that. And the timing was just not right, because CX at that time, CRM was not really considered to be an important piece in the company, right? But now I think the reality is people understand that processes don't start in the back and end in the back. Processes don't start in the front and end in the front, right? Processes are a continuous flow, and it flows bi-directional, front to back, back to front. And the problem with most CRM companies is they're islands, right? And I've been guilty of this, right? You build a CRM system, but it's an island, and you don't care about the integration in the back end. You don't care about legacy stuff, right? You build beautiful functionality, right? And you can go and build the most amazing stuff, but then it's somebody else's problem to integrate it at the end of the day. And with SAP, what people don't understand is what our customers expect is that out of the box, that stuff is integrated. They don't expect that they're going to have to hire somebody else to come in and do the integration, right? So when you build at SAP, you need to think about the end-to-end. You can't just think about the island piece of it. We need to think about how do things flow back into S4, right? How do we, when you think about a commerce scenario, right? How do you tie commerce together with the back end inventory, with supply chain, with all those things, right? So that you really can go end to end. That's the important part at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's that arrangement, I think, that is the important work that you are doing there right now. When you mentioned the acquisition of Emarsis as filling in a missing piece, I found that to be a surprising thing to say, because for the most part, the view that I have of SAP and that a lot of other people have is that component for component, module for module, SAP is very complete and very functional. It's, as you've been saying all along, the strategy, the arrangement, the putting together end-to-end, front-to-back of it, where the company's vision has been lacking.
But it doesn't really matter having the components, which I agree with you. I mean, I came here, SAP has some technologies that were developed over the last decade that are ahead of some of the competitors, if not all of the competitors, right? But it doesn't matter, because companies don't buy technologies, they don't buy products, they buy solutions, they buy outcomes, they buy stories and narrative, right? So that, if you look at SAP, over the last few years, and that's what's been missing. We can create an amazing story. I mean, if you attended CX Live last week, some of the stories that people were telling, most of the comments were like, "Wow, I didn't know that SAP could do that." And guess what? We can do much more, but we just not sparking the imagination of our clients, And what Bob says is we need to have the basic pieces, the basic components. I won't say Lego since he doesn't want me to mention Legos, but we need to have the basic pieces and the basic components together. But then we need to spark the imagination. Then we need to actually fill in the what if, like you're saying, Marshall. I mean, we got it. We just need to sell it better.
Yeah,
and I love to hear this, Marshall. If I may jump in the point,
please jump into your own broadcast. You may do that.
Okay. Yes.
This is why I told you. This is why I told you. I don't know why you bring it. I said this before. Okay.
I think you guys are nice that you let Marshall hang out with you.
I mean, seriously, respect for that one.
It is very kind of you. I thank you all.
He creates all the fun.
The aspect that you brought up a new emotional and empathic way and wave into the customers who are going to find confidence again in the part about CRM and CX in the customer arena is something what you definitely have achieved from my perspective as an advisor to solution-seeking end users. Step one. Step two, knowing a bit how Bob is driving through the companies, the stories, not knowing you, Esteban, unfortunately, before we met now here virtually. I'm sure that in the time I have read some stuff from Gardner from you, I'm very positively overwhelmed about what you two are giving us for a clear perspective for the future. And hearing this and believing you, I see that there is a lot of positive and fun as well to come for the customers. So you have a special expertise in the customer service arena, Esteban. As I had a little difficulty in properly listening when we started, where is your main activity going to be in the next months? Where will you jump?
Next month? Why do you keep going in months, man? All this stuff takes years to build.
I'm so
look,
I have to think for ages. I'm more in the Chinese way, and in months.
I totally understand. So my main focus continues to be in making CX a unique solution for the market over the long run. That would be 2, 3, 5 years into the future. Many moving pieces in that. Over the next few months, I'm focusing on sales, on service, and then on sales as part of C4C to bring it forward. Right? We have, like Marshall said, we have all the pieces. We just need to put them in the proper order, and we need to tell a better story. So that's going to be my focus, and also bring the product teams, bring the engineering teams, bring the go-to-market teams along with that to create a better narrative. If we actually can take C4C as a proof point of what we're trying to do, and then replicate that in marketing, replicate that in commerce in the next couple of years, replicate that in CDP in the next couple of years, and create these better narratives and these better stories and these better positions, and then align the product teams behind them. CX is an unstoppable force. I mean, 2-3 years from now, when we get to like the next checkpoint and where we're going, nobody can compete with what we have. It's that simple. I mean, that's why I'm here. I saw the opportunity from the outside, and I cherish the opportunity to influence it from the inside. And I know that I drive a few people crazy with my approach, but I still think that pushing forward is going to work to what we're trying to get to go. So
having a vision and having a target is something I wholeheartedly encourage and embrace and say, yes, that's my attitude. And you have a certain expertise in customer service as well.
Yeah.
So, where is the opportunity and the chance, which is one of my questions I wrote down together with Thomas and Marshall, how to make stuff from core systems to give an extra value in what is coming up?
The opportunity for customer service is like everything else, but let's focus on customer service. If you look at customer service today, we're still doing the same thing we were doing 50 years ago in customer service. Somebody has a question and we provide an answer, right? The products have been built around that. We have every channel that we can manage. We have every knowledge base that we can look into. We have every ability to create cases and manage cases. But that's not what customers are looking for. The opportunity is in how the customers change what they expect to get from customer service and what to deliver on that. right? Our version of customer service continues to be ticket-driven customer service. You gotta call, open a case, create a ticket, manage the ticket, close the ticket, and then forget about it. Versus taking each interaction as a learning opportunity, automate as much as possible, quickly resolve the issue, potentially without even impacting the company or the customer, and then learning from that and improving going forward. When you take a different approach to customer service, when you take a different focus, all the pieces that we have work the same. We just need a different way to take it forward, to bring it to market, and that's what we're focusing on. I spent 30 years, maybe or take a few, working on customer service. Like I said before, that you probably didn't hear because I had a bad sound system. It's like I work in the front lines. I actually answer the phones. I manage people answering the phones. I build call centers and help desk. I manage all these things. I have the experience going back to the beginning, and then Gartner and success, after that, my independent analyst perspective gave me the ability to basically manage the market. I know everyone and everything and what they're doing, deep down to the details. And I gotta tell you, the focus for the next few years is changing how we deliver customer service. Right, it doesn't work if you use your mobile phone to buy a product through Instagram, and then they ask you to call somebody and get on a queue line to get an answer to something that you just bought. It doesn't work.
Yeah,
right?
I love that one. Mm-hmm.
So Bob's been talking about the concept of commerce everywhere, how we focus on leading with commerce and commerce everywhere. And the same idea goes for service everywhere. Services should be an embedded portion of what we do, not a separate function that companies need to invest in.
So service is really an extension of marketing. It's an extension of commerce. Service is really not a separate piece. It's all interconnected at the end of the day, right? Most companies don't realize that their service department can actually be their best sales department, right? The ability to resolve things quickly and offer new products and services at the same time is a missed opportunity for a lot of companies who don't realize that at the end of the day, which is why I always say is, look, service technology is important, but it doesn't matter what technology you put in place in a call center, in a customer service center. The technology does not matter at the end of the day if you don't hire the right people and train them the right way, right? Because if you read the studies around customer service, what you see is that it's not the technology that's the hindrance, it's the human interaction that happens, right? Even today, most people have a negative, experience when they call a call center. They try to return a merchandise. And as you look at this, you realize that technology is a nice enabler, but it doesn't solve the problem with customer service at the end of the day. Customer service is a human issue. It's not a technology issue at the end of the day.
If you're going to use technology, you might as well treat it as an extension of your people and leverage automation, but to do the same things your people should be doing. If there are simple questions that could be answered simply, put them on self-service, put it in communities, put it on social, leverage the channels that you want to manage, but not only as an inbound response, but also as an outbound. You do proactive service. Prevent the service call is the best service you can have. There's no more satisfied customer than the one that doesn't have to deal with you. Yeah. So I totally agree. It's a people thing. Technology helps, but we need a different perspective in order to make this work. And if you look at the market, I'm dead serious, man. 50 years that we've been doing the same. We expect a problem to show up and then we'll resolve it. And then the next time that it comes up, we think that it's a unique problem that we never resolved before. It doesn't work. It doesn't. It's idiocy. We need a different approach to get this done, both at the B2B, at the B2C, at the D2C, any model that you want, any industry that you want, pick anything, right? We need to be able to do it differently.
Would you take that position that we are more talking more or less like business to people and no longer about business to consumer or business to business?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's business to people, right?
Yeah.
And it's people to people at the end of the day. And in some cases, the bandwidth doesn't allow you to, to really have a human interaction all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where things like bots and others, really, come into play. But I think bots are getting better.
Yeah.
I think machine learning is getting better, but I still am not convinced or believe at a point where, that can replace human interaction, right? I just, I'm really frustrated when when like you call a call center, right? And you get stuck in IVR hell, right? And you're passed around and passed around.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think you finally got to a human, and what you realize is you didn't get to a human. You got to a very sophisticated chatbot who sounds like a human, but then all you have to do is ask a simple question like, who won the World Series? And then you realize that you're talking to a bot and not to a human, right? And so that's why I think, companies try to use bots in some cases to replace humans because it's cheaper, right? It's, and I will say that, look, I get it. Volume call centers are tough. Yeah. But at the end of the day, nothing replaces talking to a live human being, right?
I love my call centers. I love them. This was my sales and enablement for my conferences when I was managing the CRM expos. And without my people, my human beings, getting into showing empathy, getting customers' wishes very precisely, I would have been lost and I wouldn't have made such good shows, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the dissent voice on this. I still believe that automation has a good role, but I don't disagree that people to people is the way to go at a certain level.
Yeah.
But it cannot be the do all and end all. It needs to be a structured approach that does everything from being proactive through deep expertise and everything in between. And chatbots have a role in that the same way that IVR Hell has a role in that, when done properly. And this is the biggest problem. I mean, we have the technology, we just don't implement it properly. And it goes back to people, right? People are the ones who are doing the implementations. And the same way that it's wonderful to talk to somebody who's knowledgeable, it's a real difficult time, not to say a pain in the ass, to talk to somebody who's not. And if that person who's not very knowledgeable is the one who created the automated system.
You're right, Esteban, but it's also the fact that companies don't do it for the right reason. They do it for the wrong reason.
Absolutely.
Which is, the right reason is you do it because you want to make things more effective, more efficient, and you want higher customer satisfaction at the end of the day. The companies don't do it for that. They do it because it's cost factor, and
they are greedy.
They're greedy. The more people they can cut out of a call center or having a human voice answer a live call, it saves them money at the end of the day.
And honestly, they better do cost cutting with a not useful CEO instead of cutting away.
I think that the perfect example of that is. Look, the perfect example of that is the banking industry. A few years back in the United States, banks decided that they were going to close their branches, right? So they shut down all these branches. They pushed everybody to ATMs and to call centers, right? And what happened was the churn factor became huge in banks. And along came a little bank called, I believe it was called Washington Mutual, who decided that instead of closing branches, they were going to open branches that were open, right? It was like a community center when you went to the bank, right? And what they realized, what the big banks realized, is that people wanted to come into a branch. They wanted to have that human interaction, right? You know, a good example of that is Metro Bank in the UK. You know, Metro Bank, you know, was a bank that was, you know, first of all, they weren't a stuffed shirt, you know, 200-year-old British bank like some of the ones there, right? They put themselves up in retail areas. They were open late at night. They were open early in the morning. They didn't have a bunch of glass like you were going into a prison, right? You walked in, somebody greeted you. You know, people want that human interaction at the end of the day, you know? Yeah. And look, I agree with Esteban. Automation is important. In any space, automation is important. But it has to be done right and for the right reason, not for the wrong reason.
I believe that Esteban just did this reaction in that there is a way to come for AI and the bots.
No. Now you're going too far, my friend. No. Sorry. What we're doing is, look, in 1984, I had my first computer. In 1986, when I was in college, I started my education on AI. But back then, when Japan was doing the fifth wave, and they were gonna have robots that controlled everything, right? I went through their late 80s, early 90s in college, doing neural networks. I wrote a neural network in C. I did all this stuff. This was 20 plus years ago, 30 years ago in some cases. Still today, we're doing the same crap that we were doing back then and thinking that it's innovative. It's not. We don't know what AI is. We don't know what machine learning is. We're doing some implementation.
It's a retrofit today. You know, that's what happens, right? You take, you know, it's like
cool.
It's true. It's retrofit. Yeah, you know, look, I'll give you a good example. A good example is, look, all these companies. All these companies make a big deal about things like lead scoring. Oh, it's machine learning. Jesus Christ, I could do the same thing with a SQL application running in a database, right? Yeah. You know, the same thing with opportunity scoring. Oh, it's machine learning. Look, it's no better than it was when it was running as an application in a database at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, if you can do it in Excel, it's not machine learning.
That's
the aspect. When I come towards these people with this argumentation, I got hit. Bad boy.
Look, here's the bottom line. We had chatbots. I work with I can never remember the name of the company, but I remember working with them when I was a Gartner in the late 90s, early 2000s. The first chatbot, it was called Virtual Assistant back then, vendor, right? And we're doing the same crap that we were doing 20 years ago on this. And what we call chatbots today is like the bell-bottom jeans of technology. We did this crap in 1965 with ELIZA, the first AI-driven therapies, and we're still doing the same thing. And we haven't innovated. We haven't done anything better. There's some advances in some of this stuff, but it's not what the businesses are using. What we are selling businesses as AI, it's just bell-bottom jeans and parachute pants.
The problem is in the CRM space, you can't retrofit this stuff, right? We're taking look at every player in this space. Right? Whether it's, Salesforce, Microsoft, it doesn't matter who, right? They're all sitting on old legacy platforms. And what happens is you end up retrofitting, trying to force feed machine learning into an application that was never designed for it at the end of the day, right? And so what you end up with is something that really doesn't bring a whole lot of value at the end of the day, right? The new world and the new way of really CRM is to build applications that are machine learning first. You start from that premise. You start from the premise of using machine learning to build the application, right? And it becomes a smart application. Look, applications are dumb as shit today, right? You know, look, everything is a pull model. If you want something, you have to request it. You have to pull it, right? Applications today are not smart applications at the end of the day. And I don't care what anybody says. There isn't a single application out there that I've seen that's smart, right? There's still, nothing is a push model. Everything is a pull model today.
Yep.
And when we get to building applications that are truly push models, right, then we will start to see smart applications develop, right? But we just don't have them today. They're not there.
Here, I'm gonna give you the secret to winning in AI and ML in this market. Virtually everything that we're doing today is some level of machine learning attached to analytics. There's no artificial intelligence whatsoever. All we're looking is repetitive patterns so we can reenact them, which is basically analytics. There's like nothing that goes to artificial intelligence. What Bob said is 100% spot on. It's like, we're not doing pull. We're not doing push. We're not doing machines doing anything. We're just asking machines for answers, expecting to hear from you, and then we hear some weird number or Elon Musk child's name in response, and we don't know what to do with that.
It's so right. We're looking for new technologies to find new ways to get the same answers quicker. We're not doing what we're supposed to do as humans who are tool makers and tool users.
Yep.
You make new tools to solve problems. We're not solving the problems. We're just reiterating the questions.
Yeah. Anywhere that you say AI and ML, put instead analytics with like optimization, and you have a much closer approach to what we're actually doing. And that's something we've been doing for like 10, 15 years. So it's not like it's new, just new marketing. But
gentlemen, there comes one thing which is very important to me, because I'm a boutique, I'm a small business, and I have a heart for the smaller organizations. Now you have done some fabulous stuff with the new CDP, and you've driven a large organization to high speed, and you moved the super tanker to become a speedboat. Now, what's in for the smaller organizations? What's in out of this fantastic approach for products like Business One or Business by Design products, which are in the CRM arena? Or how will smaller organizations have a benefit from what you achieved right now?
Well, so I can't really speak to Business One or to By Design, right? But I think, look, our goal is to be able to build a new CRM that can scale down as well as scale up, right? And when you build things right in the cloud, right, you do have that ability, but you have to think about that from the very beginning, right? You can't just say, oh yeah, I'm going to build something that's going to, serve all segments, right? You have to really think about it, and you have to think about what are the things that you need to do in order to make that happen. And for us, it's about figuring that out, right? Getting to a point where we can build let's just take SFA as an example, right? Mm-hmm. Today, SFA systems are expensive. They're commodity. You still pay a lot of money for what? Commodity functionality at the end of the day.
Yeah, if I'm PIM Excel, yeah?
Yeah. And the reality is that, look, the next generation of SFA has to be, machine first, voice first, push model, and it has to be pay as you go, right? For what you use at the end of the day, right? Because even small businesses, paying a subscription, especially in the time of COVID right now, is hard, right? Yep. I mean, I see this all around, right? And living here in Germany and watching a lot of these local businesses go under, right? Because they don't have the tools, they don't have the money for the tools to do the things that are necessary, right? And I think, part of it is we've got to figure out a way to build these new products that are inexpensive, right? The pricing models in the industry are not conducive, even for small businesses at the end of the day, right?
Looking at pricing, so Esteban and I had a little side discussion during the roundtable. So at the end of the day, it is about value, right? So what is the way to value for customers when it's going paid by use?
So the value is, my belief is this: if you build software that is pay as you use and pay for what you use, it forces software companies to actually build decent software.
Yep.
It forces companies to build the stuff that people will actually use, and not a bunch of useless crap that, never gets used by anybody or adds expense to the system at the end of the day, right? I do believe it's a way of if you think about it, right? Today, companies build software, and the reality is very small amounts of that ever get used. I think studies show that 20% of what's built actually ever gets used at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is if you think about that, you're paying a lot of expense for a lot of stuff that is never going to get used, is not valuable, right? So why not build software that has value from day one right out the door, right? That you pay for the value, right? And look, commodity stuff, like if you look at lead management, opportunity management, stuff like that, I mean, it's all commodity stuff at the end of the day, right? If you're really smart, you can do lead management and opportunity management. You could do it in freaking Outlook if you really, put your mind to it, right?
It's been done many times.
Yeah, people have built, look, Outlook, you used to be able to build forms, right? And you could build forms to do, and actually Outlook used to have this cool little business plugin that was probably one of the best CRM systems.
Contact manager. Yeah.
That's right. And the reality is you shouldn't have to pay for stuff that you're never going to use, right? And I just think that if you really look at how to build software that is built basically from the standpoint that you pay for what you use and you don't pay until it's implemented, right? Because I think that's another problem in the software space today is that too many companies have these long implementation times, and the reality is, in the cloud, you pay from day one, the contract signed, right? So it may take you 6 months, 8 months, 12 months to implement, but guess what? You're paying the whole time, and that's why I say, I think the industry, software companies need to prove their value at the end of the day, right? If you really believe in what you're selling, if you really believe in what you're producing, then change the model to show that you actually believe in what you're doing at the end of the day, right?
And to be fair, even though Bob's been saying this for a while, and I had similar conversations, and I actually have done exercises with different vendors around that. The problem comes down to the execution of it, and the execution until the last 4 or 5 years did not have a cloud solution. There was no cloud native solutions running behind it. There was no microservices. Go look at anybody out there, and I put any product in the market that you want. At best, they're like legacy SaaS products that they have done some embracing of the browser and some embracing of a platform. But until you get down to a true platform with true microservices that can be sliced and diced and integrated at the drop of a hat to run anywhere, which is the true cloud vision from 1969, right? Until you get to that point, we were not there. We still barely starting to get there, but COVID accelerated this for small businesses and for large businesses. Other companies have been embracing it for the last 5 years. Every CIO I know for the last 5 years changed their tune from the cloud sucks to I was told that I need to embrace the cloud as everything we do. What is it and how do I do it, right? So we have the infrastructure that we need to deliver on this. Now we need a mentality change, and this is where Bob is actually driving the change at SAP. If we can drive the mentality change within SAP to embrace cloud, we have the technology, we have the people, we have the components, we have the customers that are willing to do it. We just need to change the mentality to be able to get there. That's the biggest challenge, not talk about values or clouds or anything like that. Everything, there's not a single function out there that is not commoditized today. Pick anything you want. Pick anything you want. Give me a garage and 2 weeks, and I can replicate it.
Okay. The aspect I was looking for, what you tell is that you are driving something which I find magical, such as you are honestly talking frankly about getting things in an empathic and benefit delivering way instead of support greedy shareholders. Yeah. And this is something I honestly love. It reminds bitte?
I'm a shareholder.
Yeah, so what? I have some shares. What are they good for? No,
it's very brave of you to admit that, Thomas.
Ralph, you're absolutely right. And I think, the problem is look, there's still ways to make money. There's still ways to do the right things. But unfortunately, the financial systems in the world, especially the Wall Streets of the world, and they don't allow companies to do the right thing in a lot of ways because the pressure that you're under, right? From quarter to close to get stuff out, it creates a system that is not beneficial for anybody at the end of the day. Not beneficial for the software company, not beneficial for the customer, right? And those are the things that I think, it starts with the financial system because, companies, I think, inherently would do the right thing if they were under the pressure that they're under. But if you're a public company, it's horrible pressure at the end of the day.
Will we see SAP move towards a system like you just described, the pricing model that you just described?
Will they look at economics?
Yes. Well, look, I think, trying to get to that is an important piece, right? And actually, to be honest, SAP actually sort of pioneered the whole consumption-based pricing starting decades ago, right? With this, I forget what they called it, right? There was a measurement they used in ERP systems that I forget what it was called, but it was, they've done, I think a lot of times they've tried to do this. And I think, look, we're still gonna go look at that and figure out how do we get to that, especially on the CRM side, right? Because I do think the CRM side is critical. We need to find a way to build things that first of all are really beneficial to customers, that solve their problems at the end of the day. That customers don't have to spend a lot of time reconfiguring and writing, millions of lines of code on top of to actually get it to work, right? That those days have to stop. And in the cloud, there's nothing preventing that. The problem is you have to rethink software, right? You have to rethink how software works. You have to rethink, look, I always say this, and it's true. Every CRM system that's been built today was built for control. It was built as a management tool. It was not built to help a salesperson do their job better at the end of the day.
Just look at the little lady, and trust me, if I give her an iPad, she will be able to operate an iPad. And with that ease of use, as she already knows how to operate an iPad, imagine if a CRM system is as easy to handle and beneficial delivering. That's my dream.
Mine too, and I'm hoping this time around we actually get to that. And I think more than anything, the time is ripe. to change the industry, build new stuff that really, changes things, right? And shakes the industry up at the end of the day. And look, with SAP, the beauty is you can build stuff that can flow from front to back and back to front, and it really makes it easier for customers to get up and running. And I just think that we have to nail it and do something different this time, and we're starting down that path. And I think that as time goes on, you'll see more and more of the good stuff, just like you saw at CX Live. I also did a presentation to DSOG last week, which is on YouTube. One of the few times that I actually allow myself to speak publicly in front of a group. But if you listen to that, you'll hear even more stuff about where we're going, what we're trying to do, and I think look, the future's bright. I'm happy to be back at SAP. I think the company is changing. I think it's a whole new era at the company, and it's exciting times.
I couldn't have said it before. I think that you're going to find out in a couple of years that this conversation will lay the groundwork for people to understand what we're trying to do. So that's what we're here for.
Fabulous.
Now, I got a bunch of gazillion of questions. I don't know how much time you have left.
I have time, so I'm not in no hurry.
I cancel my meeting, so
In which case, I'd like to backtrack a little. Because you said in the beginning, you said two interesting things. One is, two interesting things. So it takes time to build a strategy. And the other one was eMarcis was a missing piece. So which piece do they actually add? Because there was is a marketing cloud.
Yeah, there was a marketing cloud, but we didn't have a true omni-channel engagement framework that could scale B2C. And also look, eMarcis is the leader. To be perfectly honest, right? They're the leader in omni-channel engagement platform. They're the leader in personalization, right? For us, that was a big thing to be able to do. So, you want to go with mommy? Hold on a minute. It's Twitch time.
Twitch.
Too much techie talk. We are not delivering a benefit to her.
Yeah, it was my baby's.
We were not customer focused. Yeah.
But the reality is eMarcis brings to us. If you think about the pieces we have with commerce, with Gigya, with now the CDP, right, and now eMarcis, you put all that together, right, and it allows us to really tie things together and have an engagement platform that allows us to really engage with consumers at any interaction point in real time, right? And that's why eMarcis was important, because they've proven themselves in this business and in the industry. The technology they've built around personalization and really being able to almost hyper personalize their targeted communications. There's nothing else out there like it. And the machine learning that they've built around this is just world class at the end of the day. And for me, it brings a whole new level for us, right? And it brings more, also it brings into the company, new talent who think differently, who come from a different perspective, right? Because they come very much from a B2C perspective, right? Yeah. And when we think about commerce, and as we go more and more into the direct to consumer, B2C commerce, right? We need that DNA, right? It's important as you start to build out things. You need, look, there's a lot of good people in SAP, but at the end of the day, like any other thing, when you start to go down a different path and build different things, you need to bring new DNA into the company in order to do that. And that's, Marcis is, they have amazing technology, great people. I'm excited. I can't wait for it to close and we can start the process.
And to add to that, think about what Bob was saying earlier, how marketing and sales and service and commerce, they all become part of a single end-to-end experience. You need a single platform to manage all that, and Marcis brings that in spades, right? This is where.
If you think about the CDP, right, is the CDP is sort of the brain, right? It brings all the data together, right? And then you have this, you have these nerves that are running from the brain. Well, the nerves have to be able to travel some way, right? And that's Immersis, right? That is that is how we get the reach, right? Is with a platform like Immersis at the end of the day.
We'll call it the hypothalamus of the enterprise software.
Lovely. I like that.
And there's another thing that Bob will correct me later that I should never say again, just so you know.
He does it. The point is, you have two splendid experiences because you gave the buzzword personalization, journey, and real time. You had two nice experiences with Thunderhead. Would Thunderhead fit into that larger picture?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a huge fan of Thunderhead. I was, I've been a fan for the last, it's been, I think, at least 6 years with them. And, I do. And I think, the problem, look, Thunderhead has technology that nobody else has. They can do journey orchestration in a way that I've never seen it done before. I'm a huge fan of what they do. And yes, I mean, look, we'd be happy to, to figure out how we do something with them, because I do think they could play a very important part for us at the end of the day. And
in that scenario, what you described, it would be another piece of magic, which makes dreams come true. Yeah. But my point of view.
But no, you're absolutely right. And, look, journey orchestration is important. The problem that you have with journey orchestration, right? And look, Thunderhead is by far the leader in this entire space.
Yep.
I think the problem that you have with journey orchestration today is that most companies just don't understand it.
Yep.
Right? They're not organized in a way where they can use it effectively, right? If you really think about, instead of, like, if you look at a marketing department today, they're organized in silos, right? You have these silos in a marketing department. But if you want to think in a different way about marketing is about experience, right? It's about that journey that a consumer or a customer is on. If you were to organize around the experiences instead of, functional silos, right? Which some companies, to their credit, have started to do that, right? You see these companies that are starting to, to put in place chief experience officers, right? And they sort of oversee and can veto what marketing does, and their ability to sort of take that end-to-end experience, right, and really focus on the experience and not just these little pieces, right? Because when you focus on the experience, and this is where Thunderhead is really good, is that they have that ability to control a journey, right? To start, stop, shift, move, right? But now you have to think about, who's going to do that in an organization? Where does that belong? Who's the user that's going to do that, right? The problem sometimes is when new technology comes along, the issue really becomes, not so much like, people always say, well, why aren't these companies huge, right? This is great stuff at the end of the day, right? But the reality is, the problem is sometimes the technology and the thought around this is so far ahead, right? That it takes time for the market in the world to catch up, right? And a point to that is, if you think about Bill Gates back in the 90s when he came out with the first tablet, right?
That fantastic Spiegel, that mirror, where you had that chit chat with,
or even look, they had Microsoft is actually a company that I look at and I say, in a lot of cases they were just too far ahead of their time, right? If you think about tablets, if you think about what they did with Passport back in the 90s, right? Having a universal ID, right? It was just, even then they had OneDrive back in the 90s and it was a flop, right? Because it was just too far ahead of the time. But you look at it today and you look at technologies like Thunderhead, and they suffer from that because I think it's hard for companies to figure out, how do I take this? How do I implement it? How do I make it successful? Right? And I can tell you, it is, look, it's great technology, but the reality is, I don't think that companies are there yet. I don't think that companies, for the most part, think in terms of personalized journeys of, we still live in a blast world, right? It's like, I'm just going to fire off 40 million emails and I don't care at the end of the day. Right?
This is cheaper. It's so cheap.
I'm going to put everybody on the same journey and I don't care at the end of the day, right? And so that world of where you stop thinking like that and you really think about really getting the right stuff to the right person at the right time, and being able to, in real time, shift that person on a different journey in a different channel, right? That's what Thunderhead does. And the reality is that I just don't think companies are there yet. There are some companies who really, who have started to think in that direction, but I just don't think a lot of companies are there yet.
But you had to let go of your kingdoms and fiefdoms, right? You had to stop being marketing and stop being service and stop being, back office and stop being front office and just think of the customer and provide an infrastructure.
That's right.
Thunderhead built a system that is like, it's like a Microsoft Bob. I'm kidding. It's ahead of its time. It's ahead of its time and it's flopping in the market because, people don't understand what it is and what it's trying to do, right? And that's the problem. But Bob has done a great job over the last couple companies where he's had to highlight Thunderhead, bring him in, and we'll see what happens. Is the best I can say. But it's definitely, in my view, it definitely needs to play a significant role in what we do going forward.
And what you described in what service can deliver, and looking back into the early ages of the one-to-one perspective, to do individual stuff for a customer, a user, I believe that what you have in your mind and where it might be a helping hand in achieving the overall goals, that would be brilliant. No?
So here, I'm trying to finish one of these days a blog post that talks about this, that talks about the problem with service, since you brought up service, but it's the same for everyone. The problem with service is like, we didn't set out to do problem resolution. We set out to do problem management. Oh, we identified the problem. Let's give it a ticket or a case number and let's manage it. Let's give it to the right person. Let's have that person give the right answer and let's have this. And we're managing the problem, but we're not resolving the problems, right? And the thing is, like, one thing that happened in the last decade is that the resolution, who decides what resolve means and how it's done, it's become the customer, not the company anymore. The company would say, This person called, we answer the phone in 3 rings, we give them an answer in 30 seconds, we close the ticket in 2 minutes, it's been resolved. And then the customer still doesn't have an answer, right? When the customer got the voice and they applied the voice to control the conversation, then it changed the way that we do things. So now we need to create a different model that reacts to the customer driving the conversation and driving what a resolution means for everything, for marketing, for sales, for commerce, for everything, right? I mean, telling me that I have to go to a store to buy something, for crying out loud, seriously, or that I have to call somebody to get an answer, or that I have to I have no resource but to get your first email to opt out of your campaigns, and then you tell me that it takes 10 days, and for the next 10 days I get email after email after email. That's not driven by the customer. We need to let the customer drive it, and that's where journey orchestration versus journey management kicks in. Management is company, orchestration is company.
That's right. And the ability to suppress, right? It's not there with a lot of the technology today. That ability to suppress is really tough, right? And also, protecting privacy, right, is it's a fine line what companies do today, and that's why things like Gigia are so important, which is that whole idea of really building in identity and consent right from the very beginning, right? And look, it's a hard business, and I think there's a lot of good technologies that are coming out, right? And some that have been out for a long time, which I think people just don't understand, right? And I think, they're gaining traction. But I do think, when you're a technology and you're ahead of the time, and it's good to be ahead, but you can't be so far ahead that adoption is years off, right? Because that's when you find that you've built technology that's not gonna, it won't survive, right? You can't survive as a company if you don't have the uptake in the technology that you've built. And there's been lots of great technologies that have died because they were just too far ahead.
Yeah,
and too early to the market, right? Too early for people to figure out how do I adopt that at the end of the day. Right?
Do you see a risk there?
Yeah.
Well, that would be pretty sad, actually.
Yeah, and that's where timing is everything in this business. You want to be ahead, right? But you don't want to be so far ahead that it's a long road to getting adoption and people to really utilize the stuff that you build at the end of the day. So you do have to, there is a balance there at the end of the day that you have to be very careful with.
Mm-hmm. You need to have vision, pull the product forward, not a product determine what you're going to do. I mean, you need to have a vision and a story, and then you need to have the product come behind and be there a year or 2 years or 3 years behind because it takes time to get there. But the vision needs to drive the product forward. If you
a good example of that is even at Microsoft, right? The XRM platform that Microsoft, back in 2012, 13, 14, that stuff was built and it was dynamite stuff, right? But it's just now that platform coupled with the Power App stuff is really starting to take off, and right. And it sometimes it just takes time for that adoption cycle to kick in, right? I mean, look, it took Salesforce a decade to get their platform to really get widespread adoption and to move forward, right? And Salesforce was ahead of their time, right? They came out with a whole new concept in CRM that was just different, right? Lightweight, easy to implement, easy to use, pay, give your credit card, right? Do 5 licenses, 10 licenses, 20 licenses, right? That's how they started, right? And then they grew over a decade. All of a sudden, they were, at 1 million users, and the next thing you knew, they were, taking off on a rocket ship. And and it really does take time sometimes for this stuff to build and to get to the right point where, where you have the right technology, companies are at the right point where they're ready to adopt it, right? Which is why technology is, can be funny sometimes. You can have the best technology in the world and nobody uses it, right? And there's lots of cases like that.
Yeah. And through that time, it's a strategy and the vision that keeps you going forward, right? It's the ability to go back to the customers and say, hey, we talked about doing this. We said it would take time. Here's how we're progressing on that. And oh, by the way, we learned along the way that this has evolved and this is what we're going to be doing a little different because it's going to be better. But that partnership between customers and companies is something that both SAP has, that very few others have that level of partnership. Some of our customers go back 40 years. They're with us, looking at us for direction and partnership and to guide them, right? And we need to leverage that with a vision, not with a product. We can't just throw a product over the wall and say, hey, this works, trust me. And then, oh, by the way, I need to spend 4 years making it work, but with no guidance on how to do that. It's the vision, right. It's the strategy, the narrative, and the guidance through the next 2-3 years that is going to make our customers say, okay, these guys got it. They understand what they're trying to do,
But you two are telling a fantastic, from my feeling, new story, which I love. I don't like it, I love it. Because it's exactly how I'm ticking, yeah? If they get something they can use, they have benefit, they have fun, and they can deliver the benefits to their customers, we are exactly at the point where we have to go.
That's right.
Yep. And that's what we're doing in a nutshell, an hour and 20 minutes later.
Why did it take you so long?
Well, you guys keep asking questions that they're deviating from the main story, so we have to answer the question.
There was something. No,
we can always blame Marshall for everything, right? So
yeah, that's what I'm here for.
we need this one, yeah. But on a bit more serious note, I was pretty doesn't really cut the mustard there. Very surprised that it took you guys that long to vocalize a strategy. Whereas, I believe it was there long ago, but what prevented you from coming out earlier? Because the market desperately asked for it.
Look, there was no hurry to rush it out. There was, I think, the key thing was to make sure we could prove some things out.
Mm-hmm.
And really, look, there's no reason to rush a strategy out until you're absolutely sure that you can execute on everything that you're going to commit in that strategy, right? And, a lot of times companies go out too quick and they promise the world and then they can't deliver at the end of the day. And for me, it's really about making sure that we can deliver on everything we commit to, right? And so, yes, we could have gone out a lot earlier, but I think, the timing was perfect for us, actually. I think it was the right timing. It was the right event. It was, the introduction of the CDP. It was the acquisition of Amerisys all at one time, right? That, showed that we are serious about the CX space and that we're, unlike what our competitors and other people would like to think that we, gave up on the space and we're, sort of, giving it away. Look, people counted us out, right? People didn't think that we were serious about the space, but we are. And I think now, we have a strategy that is plausible, that is backed up by action, not just by a lot of talk at the end of the day. And, the company showed their commitment to the CX space. The acquisition of Amerisys is proof of that, right? And So I think it was the right time. I mean, yes, we could have gone out earlier, but you know, I think it worked out good.
No, well, it will work out good, I think. But talking about CDP and the Gigia platform below it, why did it take SAP so long to recognize the pearl that they actually have at their hand, in their hands?
Focus and execution, right?
Oh.
You know, look, the reality is that I think, you know, you have to understand the space. You have to understand these products in depth, and you have to understand what they can do, right? And I think the reality is coming in, you know, for me, I knew Gigia before, and, you know, and I knew what kind of platform they had. And, you know, identity is sort of the, you know, if you think about CDPs, the one major component to a CDP is identity, right? And identity is absolutely critical, especially online identity and consent, right? And so, look, the team at Gigia had built a platform, first of all, in the cloud, could scale, right? I mean, they handle, you know, tens of billions of profiles on a daily basis, right? I mean, this was a platform that really could do the things that a CDP needed to do. And so it was just a matter of building off of what was already there and figuring out how to come at CDP in a little different way, which was really tying it to commerce first and foremost instead of marketing. Because I really believe the combination of identity, consent, CDP, and commerce is a powerful one at the end of the day. And now you add the immersive stuff with marketing, and we tie the marketing stuff to it. And now we have something that I believe is a gold mine for customers. And you know, the key is helping them to implement it, helping them to understand that. And yes, you know, look, you know, sometimes companies acquire companies and they don't really understand the power of what was acquired until years later, right? You know, look, SAP has a product, Brim, right? Great stuff, right? This billing stuff is amazing, right? But you know, it's based off of a product that I acquired when I was at SAP the first time around. It was a small French company that, you know, was one of the first to really do rating and charging and had figured out how to use an NFC chip in a phone, right? And you know, and this was technology that was a little bit ahead of its time. And it just took a while for, you know, the company to figure out, right, that this piece was really critical. And if you think about modern day billing, rating and charging is critical in this new world, right? And sometimes it just takes time to figure out what you have before you can actually take it and do something with it, right? And I think, you know, that happens a lot. You know, companies get acquired and it's not till years later that they figure out what they have and what they could do with it at the end of the day, right?
Totally agree.
And I mean, in fairness, SAP has technologies that we still haven't deployed that are amazing, that they've been in there for a while, that they've been stewing and bubbling up in little by little, that you're gonna see some things emerge. You know, they've been acquisitions and no acquisitions or whatever. But like going back to what Bob said earlier, a lot of this stuff, yeah, sure, we could you know, sell this stuff directly after acquisition, but the true integration into a vision, into a better story, like for Gigia and CDP, you know, and the version of CDP that is not just marketing, but it's commerce and marketing and service and everything else. And the true integration of that with the Marsis for an omni-channel engagement platform and all that stuff. Man, this stuff is like, you know, takes time to put together. And like, you know, we never stop pushing forward with that. We just didn't know exactly the direction. And once we figured the direction, like Bob said, we went from like, you know, what are we doing with this stuff to like fully be on the market with a brand new product in 6 months? That's huge for any company. That's incredible for a company the size of SAP. And I'll let you fill in the holes because you know an SAP longer than I have.
Okay.
So,
from my point of view, these have been pretty perfect closing words. Unless,
oh wow.
Well,
I never have the last word. Let me savor that for a second. Let me see how it feels. You know.
Okay, we'll cut out all the remainder of the clip. Really, many thanks for both of you being here. That's been
No, it was great. We appreciate it. Yep. Anytime, we're happy to, to join.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll take you up on that, I'm sure.
Germans at the other end. I take you for your word.
Seriously. And maybe one of these days when this Corona stuff gets a little better, we can actually meet in person and,
I would love, honestly. And it would be a fantastic opportunity to bring you some because I'm born and raised in Cologne. I would love to bring some German Kölsch beer to you, and we had a lot of fun, except if Esteban is not into beer, I get some wine, no problem. Yeah.
Well,
does he have alcohol? That's the only question.
Okay. If you prefer fruit syrup or orange juice, no problem. I'm very creative.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll bring my kids along for that one.
I'm very grateful that you took the two of you and Marshall and Tom the time to be with us. I appreciate very, very much. And we are honored to have a fantastic talk with you, half an hour longer than we planned, but we are really, really grateful. Thank you very, very much.
No problem. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Take care, everyone.
Yep.
Bye.
Stay healthy. Until next time.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.